This episode of Destructoid is brought to you by Crysis 3. Coming up on Destructoid, Bungie almost sort of kind of reveals destiny, Assassin's Creed gets in touch with its spirit animals, and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is out. Does it make the cut? Are you tired of cutting puns yet? Well, we've got a whole bunch more right now on Destructoid.
Welcome to Destructoid. I'm Tara Long.
And I'm Max Scoville.
Happy Tuesday, Max.
Happy 100,000 subscribers
Hell yeah!
day.
We hit 100,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel.
We totally did, and all we had to do was shame our audience.
I know.
Last Friday.
We're so good at that sort of
Sorry,
thing.
guys, I didn't mean to raise my voice at you back then. But thank you for subscribing if you guys just now did, and it's very exciting for us to hit the last big milestone of internet fame for quite some time.
We have another announcement related to that at the end of the show, but you will have to listen to video game news before then.
Oh, poor you. Okay, so this week sees the release of a game that people have been waiting quite a while for. It's Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Over on Destructoid, Conrad Zimmerman put up his review with the headline, "Not solid, but razor sharp." You know, because it's different from Metal Gear Solid, not because it isn't a competent game. Conrad seemed to really enjoy the game and driving home the fact that this is a major departure from the rest of the Metal Gear series, in spite of containing a fair amount of familiar tropes. Story-wise, it doesn't require encyclopedic knowledge of the series, and the handful of references made to the previous games aren't really integral to understanding what's going on in Revengeance. As for the gameplay, it should be obvious at this point that this isn't a stealth game. As Conrad quite eloquently explains, Revengeance is like a mirror's reflection of the Metal Gear formula in that it offers both stealth and combat, but places a reversed focus and value on them. Many combat encounters can be circumvented using stealth techniques, but just as Metal Gear Solid can be said to be at its worst when fighting against its combat mechanics, Raiden isn't built to sneak. Conrad praised the combat, though pointed out how odd it is that the game's characters encourage a stealthy approach, though the game itself rewards players with points for fighting people and cutting them in half and so forth. That is just sort of a small vertical slice of Conrad's review. I reviewed the game for Rev3 Games over on our YouTube channel, and I agreed with basically everything Conrad had to say, but our scores were just drastically different. Conrad gave Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance a big, shiny, pretty 9 out of 10, and I gave it a slightly much less impressive 3 out of 5, though I still think it's a really fun game. The main bone of contention here is that Revengeance is a pretty short game, arguably.
Yeah, I heard that.
Conrad pointed this out too. You're looking at a 5-hour playthrough. I mean, that's kind of one of those things you can replay it, but that's not, that's still a playthrough. It goes about 5 hours. That's going to fluctuate a bit depending on difficulty, but the value of Revengeance depends a lot on how much you are willing to replay it and how much you're kind of expecting in terms of gameplay. There are unlockable VR missions and bonus items and stuff like that, but for the most part, it is a pretty straightforward game. I felt that the other Metal Gear games, they might be a similar length, and they've got obviously a lot of cutscenes to kind of pad them out, but they're also a lot less linear, and there's more kind of exploration, and stealth is kind of inherently a more slow-paced, sort of patient game, whereas Revengeance is just like, "Dah!" and you take the sword and you run and cut the guys. But yeah, so the general consensus from the critics, even aside from myself and Conrad, is that Revengeance is a really good game, but personally, I felt a little bit disappointed. But
after hearing what you said about it, I was surprised to see that he gave it a 9 out of 10. That seems quite positive.
No, I mean everyone's really liking it. I think it just really depends on how much you're willing to kind of replay it.
Yeah.
But yeah, 9 out of 10 from Conrad. That is a fancy high score.
Wow,
so,
that's
go
very
read that
exciting.
review and go watch my review and go read some other reviews, because those are all from different human beings who have differing emotions and feelings. And try not to pay too much attention to that little score at the end, because the words are more important.
Also, a 3 out of 5 doesn't necessarily translate to a 6 out of 10. So, anyway, moving on to a completely different topic. After months of waiting and more rampant speculation than even I can handle, we finally have our first real details on Destiny, which is, of course, Bungie's upcoming shared world shooter, which I guess is what we're calling it now. That's a thing I never thought I'd have to say. So here's what we know about this game. Sort of a little bit of everything. A lot of the game, including the story, is still very nebulous. We know it takes place in the distant future after humanity has reached a golden age and subsequently been brought to near extinction by an unknown threat. So the giant floating orb that you've probably seen in a lot of the ads for this game, That orb is called the Traveler, and it's basically the last beacon of protection for all of humanity on Earth. And then the rest of the world has been taken over by aliens, and that's where you come in. So players will assume the role of Guardians, which are humans imbued with special powers given to them by the Traveler to protect and replenish the last remaining shreds of human life. So obviously this shares a lot of similarities to MMO, so character customization is going to be a huge thing. There will also be different character classes to choose from. They haven't listed all of them yet. They listed 3 so far, I believe. But here is where things get interesting. Rather than taking place all on Earth, which is where the sort of central player hub is going to be, you'll be able to purchase spaceships to travel around to other planets and moons in our solar system. And you can see in the developer diary that Bungie posted this week some concept art of the different enemies and environments, which seem to have a very desolate and almost post-apocalyptic feel to them. I wasn't really expecting that, but I guess given the storyline, it does make sense. The game will feature both solo missions and competitive multiplayer, but the big emphasis is really going to be on cooperative missions, and those will allow for 6 or more players. They haven't put a hard cap on that yet, but these apparently will incorporate matchmaking very similar to the way that Journey used it, where it's all sort of done behind the scenes and you don't really have to take an active role. Unfortunately, that does mean that the game will require a persistent online connection, which I know is something that you guys won't be happy about, but such is the nature of these kinds of games. So those are the most basic details we have right now. Like I said, there is still a ton of stuff we don't know yet, but at least the team at Bungie seems confident. The company's co-founder, Jason Jones, said that if you enjoy first-person shooters, Destiny is going to be the best shooter you've ever played.
Huh.
Yes, big words. I'll believe it when I see it, Mr. Jones.
That's a lot of words to come out of a guy's mouth about a game.
They certainly are, especially a guy who made the game. Destiny, meanwhile, is currently looking at a 2013-2014 release. This is going to be consoles only, most likely. I think PC version is looking not very good at this point. Sorry, guys. If you do want more info and impressions, there is way more that I couldn't mention in this story. Hamza Aziz from Destructoid actually just put up a very long preview over on Destructoid.com, which talks all about his playtime, which I mean, was like 2 minutes. They literally brought all these media people out to Seattle and then showed them 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's got some interesting thoughts. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that is on Destructoid.com.
Yeah, I was sort of let down by the amount of coverage that came out of this. It sounded like they really didn't show off a whole lot. There's like sort of snippets of kind of gameplay, but honestly, you could have spliced in like some random shots from Mass Effect, and I wouldn't have been too surprised if it was like a fan-made.
Yeah,
cut.
it was also sort of weird that they did this and then released like pre-orders for the game right after, which is a little shady if you only release 2 minutes of gameplay, but
hey, they got people talking about the game, so there's that. Anyway, shifting gears once again. Here in the good old USA of America, yesterday was President's Day, which is a day when we celebrate not going to work on yesterday. Anyway, in honor of President's Day, or just because, Ubisoft Montreal has dropped some new Assassin's Creed DLC this week. If you haven't been keeping track of this, it's called The Tyranny of King Washington, and it throws AC3's hero Connor into an alternate reality where he never joined up with the Assassins. He's just like a Native American warrior, and for some reason, America's first president, George Washington, went mad with power and declared himself king.
Because video games.
Right, exactly. And there's really no explanation why this happens, so you're just kind of, you just wake up and you're like, where am I? And you're just like, George Washington is setting things on fire, and you're like, well, better figure out what the hell went wrong. What's interesting is Ubisoft is releasing this DLC in 3 chapters, with each part taking place in a different section of the Assassin's Creed 3 map, which have all been kind of redesigned a little bit. There's a sort of a different flavor to them, because it's an alternate reality and so forth. The first chapter is on the frontier, and the second is going to be in Boston, and the third one is going to be in New York, and the chapters are being released a month apart, which I think is an interesting kind of episodic way of doing things for Ubisoft. It's as though they're taking a page from some other recent games that had an episodic downloadable release schedule that seemed to be successful. But I think they're really trying to build up the sort of the discussion-based aspect of, they want to make it like a TV show that you can play. So that's all the boring PR spiel. The fun part of the DLC is that Connor gets crazy Native American superpowers. In the first episode, he gets a wolf cloak ability that makes him turn invisible, and he can also send invisible wolves to attack people, which I think it's
Sure.
a pretty cool power. Some people think it's dumb, but I'm like, have you ever been bit by an invisible wolf? Because it probably sucks. In the second chapter, he can turn into an eagle and fly to points that are sort of in line of sight, which is kind of like the blink move in Dishonored, but a little bit more parkour, and also you're a bird. And then in the third chapter, or third episode, you can turn into a goddamn bear and do like a super slam, hammer fist, shockwave move like bears do in real life all the time, I imagine. I actually sat down with one of the dudes from Ubisoft last week, and he walked me through a bit of the first episode. And I'll be honest, if you hated Assassin's Creed 3, this probably isn't for you, because it really doesn't fix anything that was problematic in the main game. It's just kind of adding on and having some fun, you know, giving you bear superpowers. Why would you be mad about that? Also, there's thankfully just no Desmond in the DLC. It has nothing to do with like the sort of Assassin's Creed meta story. So it's just you're Connor and you get some bear powers, and George Washington's being a jerk. So yeah. Anyway, Ubisoft they're playing around. You know, they're getting experimental here. They're trying a new approach to DLC, and they're throwing in some very weird subject matter. So you know, I guess it's lower stakes with DLC than it is with a full retail release. So. That being said, the video is up over on the Rev3 Games channel, so go look at that. And I make some very stupid jokes about bears. But the first chunk of the Tyranny of King Washington DLC is out on the 360, PS3, and PC for 800 Microsoft points or $10, and you can go check that out right now. And the next two chapters are going to be coming out on March 19th and April 23rd for the same price.
I'm glad to see they're not taking themselves quite so seriously.
I wish every game. I don't wish every game. I always say I wish every game had, and then whatever the stupid idea is. But if every game had that, those things wouldn't be magical.
That's true. Then we'd be complaining about how boring that is. Thank goodness for that. So yet more developments have been made in the big Rayman Legends Wii U kerfuffle. Ubisoft is still adamant about postponing the game's release date until September, but now they're promising one more early exclusive to appease angry fans. Apparently a couple people have actually been protesting outside of Ubisoft's offices, which is kind of interesting. Some members of the dev team released this video on Ubisoft's Facebook page yesterday announcing that the game's full online challenge mode will now be available exclusively to the Wii U version. Not only that, it'll be available for free on the eShop as soon as April. The challenge mode is supposed to feature 5 different settings, each with its own unique gameplay elements. Some of them looked like they were flying levels, and some looked sort of like runner levels, kind of what was in Rayman Jungle Run, the iOS game that came out last year. And of course, you'll be able to play all of the challenge levels either solo or co-op with up to 5 players, which is cool. 5 players, I guess, is something that you can only do on the Wii U, so there that is. There's also going to be new daily and weekly challenges, as well as leaderboards, so you can brag to your friends. Or in my case, not brag to your friends, because I am terrible at competitive stuff. This is actually the first online mode that has ever been in a Rayman game, believe it or not, and it certainly makes the Wii U version the most attractive platform. But that being said, don't think we've forgotten about what you did, Ubisoft. I watched your video. I know how to spot a vacant look in someone's eyes when I see it, and those developers look tired as shit. Give them a break. And also, this better be worth it. I don't like what you're doing here.
Those poor guys take some naps.
Oh, Michel Ancel just looked like he had huge bags underneath his eyes, like he hadn't slept in weeks.
Oh,
maybe that's just a French thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, let's take a word from our sponsor, and then we're going to talk about very important things.
Yes. So I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys that Crysis 3 is a game where you run around wearing a super suit fighting aliens and bad guys inside of an overgrown biodome version of New York. But did you know about the gun that shoots 500 rounds a second?
Because there's totally a gun that shoots 500 rounds a second.
Yep.
It is called a Typhoon, and it doesn't even sound like a machine gun. It sounds like an electric razor. It is basically just a garden hose of bullets. Oh no, there are aliens on my biodome again. I better just get my bullet hose, aka the Typhoon. And you're just like, get off my lawn, aliens.
Crysis 3, aka the game where you also wear a crazy-ass nanosuit and shoot a weapon at 500 rounds per second, is available today, February 19th, for PC, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3.
Okay, back to the show.
Excellent sound effects. Yeah, so I know we've been talking about it for months and months and months now. It seems like forever, but there is a 99.99% chance that Sony will definitively reveal the PlayStation 4 tomorrow during their big See the Future event. That's what their video looked like, this hand motion. That is being live streamed tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific time on PlayStation.com. We're not going to have any coverage of it on this channel, but we will be doing plenty of stuff over on our Rev3 Games channel, including putting up trailers, info on the hardware specs, and impressions from Adam Sessler, who is actually going to be attending the event in New York City tomorrow.
He got invited.
He did. So if you want to keep abreast on one of the biggest events in gaming this year without having to actually sit through some terrible, awkward presentation, then you should definitely head over to our Rev3 Games channel. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It's over there somewhere. And also make sure you sign up to receive emails for all of our uploads so that you guys can get all that information as soon as it becomes public. Because once that stuff hits, it's all the internet is going to be talking about.
And of course, Destructoid.com is also going to be doing written coverage, so you can go to there, where I'm sure there'll be a lot of people sort of live blogging the thing.
Yes.
And I'm sure they got somebody in attendance. But this is exciting.
This is big.
It's the first next-gen console.
This is like one of the biggest things that's happened since you and I started working in gaming.
Well, we got to do one, there was
forgetting
that
the
one,
Wii U, but
we do. I'm sorry, Nintendo fans.
We love you, but seriously, look at the Wii U.
We need to see the future. We need to see the futures. Get out of the way, down in front. We have to see the future with our eyes.
On that note, that is all the time we have for today. If you guys want to keep up with us outside of the show, you are more than welcome to follow us on Twitter. I am on there at TerraLongest. He is Max Scoville. And the show is, of course, at Dtoid Show. And sadly, we will not be having a live show this Friday, which is sort of a dumb thing to do because of a new console coming out and everything. But unfortunately, Tara and our producer Zach and myself are all leaving town on completely unrelated, separate, not secret vacations. Yes.
But you should keep an eye on the Dtoid Show Twitter account because we'll be giving away a ton of free codes all week long to commemorate our 100,000 subscriber milestone.
Yep, we got some good ones.
I wasn't kidding. It's seriously just we're all coincidentally going on a vacation at the same exact time. The weekend after a friggin' console gets announced. Whoops! Anyway, have a safe and wonderful week and weekend. We will see you guys back here on Tuesday.
I can't wait for our friendship.